Babukeli emakhaya sakwamukela kwintandokazi yenu yohlelo oluthanda kakhulu, as you know, Yilungelo Lakho, it's your ride, and of course we're coming to you live khona la kumamba phambili SABC 1 Mzansi. For sure uyazi ke akajala intokazi yanibingelela umashongo lolu alisho unhlanhlo igama. Ngithi mbukeli kulesi sikhathi phela somnotho ontengantengayo kunokuthwala kanzima phela kwabantu emaphaketheni. Abathenga abaningi sebebhekela phela ama special namanani aphansi kuzinto ezibizwa ama-auction. Kodwa kuyazi yini nambukela ukuthi uma uthenga kwi-auction kufuneka phela ubhekisise izinto eziningi. Ungashayela ucingo la e-studio mbukeli 0117146918, alternatively 7146919. consumer@sabc.co.za. Asingabe sapholisa amaseko mbukeli, asingene shiqe odabeni lethu la namhlanje. The rising number of asset repossessions, be it imoto, houses or other items of value, has now fueled a very big boom in terms of auctions across the market. And while this creates an opportunity for abantu abaningi who are in search of a bargain and of course a value for money purchase, it does have some risks. But then, uwa-avoida kanjani lama risk? Well, Ubabu Joff van Rienen from the South African Institute of Auctioneers now joins us live via Skype in order to share with us, Mbugeli, how best you can approach lama auctions. Sinayo futhi insizwa lapha ku Skype naye ubaba uJoseph Silolo, yenake ubuya kwikomishoni yamalungelo abathengi phecelezi i-National Consumer Commission. Gentlemen, a very good afternoon to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us, Joff. Let's start with you. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a bit about, of course, the Auctioneers Institute of South Africa, sir.
Well, it's a non-profit organization that's been around for many, many decades. They're there to look after the public, as is Joseph and his entire team. You can reach us on auctioneering.co.za, and we are here to offer free information and guidance to anybody who wants to attend an auction in South Africa.
Staff Babu Joseph, siyazi ukuthi sijwayele usisithezi uyena ojwayele ukuthi abe nathi la nsizwa, but nawe siyakwamukela. Awusichazele wena umsebenzi wakho uyini lapha kwinkomishoni baba?
Okay, ngibingelela ababukeli, ngibingelela nawe msazazi, and hi to Joff. I-National Consumer Commission i-commission protector abathengi bala eSouth Africa kuma transactions abangena kuwona, and then minake I am the commission's company secretary. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Welcome, gentlemen. Now, Joff, let me start with you very quickly. I mean, for the benefit of our viewers, take us through some of the many different types of auctions that do exist, and of course, you can take us through the voluntary and of course the involuntary ones as well, sir.
Well, there's basically movable property and immovable property. And then it boils down to many, many categories, whether it's a real estate property asset or whether it's a car, whether it's antiques, whether it's furniture. There are hundreds of different kinds of auctions. We even auction off cattle. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange is technically an auction, as are most stock exchanges around the world, which tends to get a little bit more complicated. But even when it boils down to cattle auctions, which we still conduct around the country, you can literally auction off anything that's possible.
And then which ones are more at risk, Joff, if you could pick a few? I mean, we're seeing, of course, in these tough economic times, a lot of people are sort of moving away from buying from that, the primary market, so to speak. They are now looking for bargains via your auction. So take us through those, and tell us which one is more at risk.
Well, actually, none are more at risk. Yeah. You know, when you buy a property, obviously the bidding increments are somewhat higher. You may be bidding in hundreds of thousands or millions. When you're buying a car, it may be slightly smaller. You may be bidding in tens of thousands or thousands. I wouldn't say it's really a risk, other than the fact that now that everyone has gone online and you can literally buy anything from your cell phone, the risks have been diminished substantially, and you can literally attend any auction in the country now on your laptop or on your cell phone. So it's become a lot easier for the public at large. It's become a lot more open and transparent for everybody in South Africa, whether you're sitting on the beach or whether you're sitting in the mountains or whether you're sitting in the Eastern Cape on a farm. Literally, if you have a cell phone signal, you can now attend an auction.
Babu Joseph, sihlale sizwa lana kuthiwa uma uthenga into kwi-auction kunale term abayisebenzisayo ethiwa i-footstoods, okusho ukuthi mhlambe uma uthenge into lapha awukhona ukuthi mhlambe kube nalabo cooling off period. Into esifuna ukuyi-understand lansizwa ukuthi then we know of the Consumer Protection Act, right? So how does it then, umthetho ungena kanjani, and how does it govern lama auction where they say into ma uyithenga njengoba injalo uzozilungisela yona mangabe ikuhlupha?
Yeah, that is correct. What was the Consumer Protection Act, the regulator, what happens before the auction, what happens during the auction, and what happens after the auction.
Okay, kanjani sizwa uchazisise lapho?
Yeah, so in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, the auctioneer needs to advertise the auction and make the rules available, and also allow the prospective bidders to inspect the goods prior to bidding. Okay. So logo kusho ukuthi ukwazi ukuthi ubuke whatever that is on the lot lezothengiswa ngalolo suku, uyibuke uzijulise ngayo, so that you are properly informed about that subject matter lento ofuna ukuyithenga. Vele because ngempela it is on that basis you buy it as is.
All right. Joff, let's come back to you. I mean, let's talk about the laws that actually govern auctions, because what I'm getting from Joseph, I mean, we know about the footstoods term or terminology that is often used when you buy something at an auction, basically loosely meaning that if you buy it, if it's broken, then it's your problem. Now, Joseph is saying the onus is on the auctioneers to ensure that everything has been checked and pre-checked and everything was done in accordance to, of course, the CPA in order for them to actually auction those goods. So now I want to know, like, how are your what laws actually govern these auctions? Is there specific rules or mandate that are enforced upon auctioneers? And maybe take us through this food stewards terminology. What does that mean? Like, does that mean basically that if I buy something at an auction, I've bought it as it is, I cannot have a cooling off period, and if I have any grievances, there's basically nothing I can do if I find any fault with the goods, sir?
Well, Joseph is right, and the new CP Act helped an enormous amount when it came into effect about 7 or 8 years ago, I think, Joseph. The footstoods clause is not as scary and as intimidating as it may sound. What that basically does is it forces an auctioneer, any auctioneer in the country that is, to tell you exactly what the asset is, what may be good or what may be wrong with it. However, if you buy something on auction, both the buyers and the sellers are protected by auction within the CP Act. So which means, yes, it is all footstoods. However, you are allowed to speak to the auctioneer beforehand and ask him, what is wrong with that car? What is wrong with that laptop or the cell phone I'm trying to buy? And he must tell you as per the law. If I would suggest that everybody that goes to an auction is, if you go there beforehand, read the rules of auction, speak to the auctioneer saying, is there anything wrong with that BMW car I'm wanting to buy at auction? And he's going to say one of two things. Either I don't know, or yes, it doesn't have an engine. So there's a lot of fallback and support for the consumer with the NCC, with Joseph's office. But it's there to protect them as well as the auctioneer. So we have to now, by law, notify the bidders or the public at large if there is something wrong with an asset. If we don't know, we also stand up there and we say, listen, there is a disclaimer. We are auctioning off 1,000 cars for the government. We haven't driven them. We don't know, but please come before and test drive the cars if you're allowed to. Bring your mechanic, have a look at them, do your history, do your research, and make sure you're satisfied as a bidder before you bid. If you're unsure, rather bid. But if you are wanting, then, just phone up the auction and ask questions. That's the best thing to do.
That's very interesting, Joff. Mbukeli uyasho Joff lapha ukuthi you can actually now umthetho usuyasho ukuthi bona njengama auctioneers usungahamba mhlambe uzothenga into efana mhlambe nemoto ngifuna ukumbuza kodwa ngezindlu uhamba uyobheka mhlambe uze nabantu bakhe abazi umakhenika wakho ozokubhekela ukuthi leyo moto iyasebenza yini ngoba once isuka lapho masubhidile wayithatha hayi noma miphume isondo usulapha egateini abasayingeni bona sibambe lapho Mbukeli sithi 0117146918 alternatively 7146919 consumer@sabc.co.za siyabuya khona manje umajali uthi nje hlalani ubheka amalungelo enu Mbukeli, welcome back. Ubheke Yilungelo Lakho live here. Mamba phambili SABC 1 eMzansi for sure. Nami uMangcolosi umashongololo. Mbukeli zivuliwe ingcingo manje ungasishayela ucingo 0117146918 or 7146919. Ungasithumela ne-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Siyatholakala futhi ku Facebook. I'll be taking your Facebook messages later on. My guest today uBaba Joseph Slolo ovela kwi-NCC nobaba uJoff van Renen yena ke uvela lapha ya kuma auctioneers ala eMzansi. Sikhuluma ngokuthi Mbukeli njengoba nje abantu abaningi phela isimo somnotho singasekho sihle sebebalekela ukuthi bayothenga izinto lapha kuma auction ngoba bayitshela ukuthi mhlambe bazothola ama bargains izinto izoba cheaper. So namhlanje sikuchazisela kahle ukuthi ama risk ukuthi uhambe uyothenga izinto lapha ya kuma auction angabe imaphi. Yithi ngize kuwena ke Babu Joseph osichazele ilokhuzana iNCC umsebenzi wayo ngiyeza ukuthi uchazile baba ukuthi umsebenzi wabo ilokhuzana the onus is on ama auctioneers ukuthi benze wonke ama regulatory checks before benza lawo ma auction. Nenza njani ke mase nithola ukuthi njengoba beshila uJoff ukuthi if umuntu eyibuza iauctioneer ukuthi what is wrong with these goods then they must tell you ukuthi mhlambe khona into wrong ngayo. What if umuntu engakutsheli ukuthi mhlambe le moto ayina njini or mhlambe kuna something wrong isigugile ayisekho kwimoto plan izinto ezinjalo iziphi inyathelo umuntu angayithatha methola ukuthi lo muntu omdayisele impahla kwi-auction ummisleadile kamtshelanga iqiniso ngalezi zinto ayithengile baba.
Okay, in the event la umuntu ethi khona umisleadiwe i-auctioneer uyakwazi ukuthi alodge i-complaint nathi si-NCC because if ubuka lo mthetho i-Consumer Protection Act ufuna ukuthi abathengi banikezwe more information ngezinto okumele bazithenge. However, it is not required of an auctioneer to actually know everything that may be wrong with a particular item as opposed to an out-and-out seller of goods.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that the auctioneer is at large to mislead abantu. So if a consumer noma umthengi efila ukuthi uyamisleadwa then uzomela alodge complaint nathi bese siya investigator sikwazi ukudetermine if lokho kusho the consumer correct noma ukuthi then was this consumer specifically misled.
Okay. And then Marapu Joseph, if umuntu esayithengile lento sekuthiwa i-food stud already lo muntu usebhidile wakhokha nezimali usakhona yini ukuthi eze kunina azoloja leyo complaint niyakhona ukuthi ni address?
Correct. Remember the fact that suyithengile why receiver doesn't change the fact that you would have been misled, but ours is to check whether you were indeed misled, and if that's the case we then want to have what is prosecutor the auctioneer, but it will depend on the outcome of the investigation. So it is a complaint can be lodged at any time.
Okay. Joff, You mentioned something very interesting. And I mean, we had a show recently, I think it was maybe earlier in the year, if I'm not mistaken, and we were talking about the nitty-gritties of buying goods at auctions. Now you mentioned something very interesting, that buyers or potential bidders can actually come and inspect those goods before going to bid. But we don't hear about that much often. We just hear about the day of the auction, for example. Can people go then and inspect a house to see if the piping and everything, electricity and everything is, is as it's told on the documents and so forth? Can people do that now?
Absolutely, absolutely. They can and they must do that. I wouldn't buy a car or a house or even a TV unless I was allowed to inspect it before an auction. You are within your rights to do that. You're more than welcome. In fact, every auctioneer I know across the country feels far better if the public come a couple of days before the auction during viewing times, or even a couple of hours earlier on the day of the auction, before the auction starts. Have a look, kick the tires, start the engine, walk around the house. A lot of auctioneers now offer inspection certificates of properties as well. So the consumer is a lot more protected now, thanks to the NCC and Consumer Protection Act, things like that. It has really helped our industry a lot, because I think before that, the public at large was scared.
Yeah.
Now we have people attending auctions because they're fun and entertaining, and they say, we'd rather go to auction than sit at home and watch TV. So it's a lot of fun attending an auction now.
But are there really bargains there, Joff? I mean, a lot of people really are looking for those bargains or cheaper goods when they go buy at auctions. And I think we're always saying that a lot of people want that instant gratification and they don't do the necessary checks and so forth. But are there really bargains and good buys if you go to auctions? And how do you then determine if this is a bargain, I mean, that you're getting from the auctioneers?
Well, you definitely get instant gratification at an auction, because what a sales agent can do in 6 months, auctioneers can do in 60 seconds.
In 60 seconds, yeah.
It's a lot more exciting.
Yeah.
Some auction, depending what the auctions are. I mean, if it's a sheriff's auction, if it's a legal auction, then obviously creditors need to be paid. Banks need to be paid. Government departments need to be paid. There is an opportunity to get things below value. But however, it's in the bidder's own interest to bid what he thinks is a fair price. It's in the eye of the beholder. If you go to a car auction and you bid 250,000 Rand for a BMW, and it's a lot cheaper than buying a new one or buying a second-hand one through a dealership, and you believe you've got a good bargain, then you have. However, it's from a willing buyer and a willing seller. So if you have those two joint mandates, and invariably, they always say a good auction is when the buyer isn't a little bit happy and neither is the seller a little bit happy. However, you meet somewhere in the middle and you shake hands and you settle on a fair price. That is when both buyer and seller score on the deal. So I don't believe you'd ever get an absolute steal on property or an asset. I believe if you have a qualified seller and a qualified buyer, and they both believe in a value of the asset, both parties walk away happy.
All right, and very quickly, Joff, before we go to break, is one able to bid then while waiting for a loan approval for finance, say from a bank? No.
Please remember to read the rules of auction. The auctioneer has to announce them before the auction starts. If he doesn't, you're allowed to get them from his website beforehand. You are not allowed to bid subject to finance, be it a car, be it a house, be it any machinery or asset you're wanting to buy. It's either pre-approved with financial institution, or you must have cash in the bank. But whatever you do, if you don't have the money or your bank manager holding your hand next to you, don't bid. Be careful there.
All right, okay, mbukeli uyezwa-ke kuthiwa awukhona ukuthi uhambe uye lapha ukuyobhida, kumele ufike usuphethe cash. Unfortunately, hayi ukuthi ufike lapho usathi hayi phela mina kumele ibhenki ukuthi isaphethe ama-forms ami sazo-approve i-loan. Sesathi shelele ey'tolo mbukeli. Don't go anywhere. 011-714-6918 or 714-6919. Those are the magic numbers. We're back shortly after this. back live on SABC 1 Mzansi for show. Bheke Yilungelo Lakho mbukeli namhlanje sikhuluma ngama-auction ukuthi what are the risks uma uhamba uyothenga impahla uyitshela ukuthi wena you gonna score a bargain kanti ke kuthiwa kunezinye izinto nemigomo phela ekumele uyilandele. Ama-guest wami uJoff van Rienen and ubaba uJoseph Silolo. Ungashayela ucingo wena on 0117146918 or 7146919. Babu Joseph, let me ask you something here. I know ukuthi besithintile when we began the show sisakhuluma ngama-legalities ne-CPA and so forth. What then happens to ama-warranties nama-cooling off period? Do they still apply kulezi zinto zelokhuzana esezidayisiwe kuma-auction baba?
No. E-auction is a completely different transaction to your normal everyday transactions.
Yes.
And that also depends on rules and auction. So what must be emphasized with auction, as we always emphasize with everything, is that the first line of protection is yourself.
Yes.
What the law did was it put in place mechanisms such as requiring the auction must be advertised in advance before the actual auction.
Okay.
And then it therefore we inspect ufunde nalama rules.
Okay.
So it will not actually help you auction without having read the rules and understood the rules, without having inspected what is being sold. So it helps for you to check those warranties and so on. You will either find them in the rules or you won't find them.
Okay.
But you will definitely know what you are buying.
Okay. So okusho ukuthini lapho Joseph, okusho ukuthi ama-auctioneers kubi bona sebebeka imigomo uma bona sebedayisa into, it's no longer the creditor that has like izinto lezi kade sikhuluma ngazo warranties noma cooling off period. So kuba ama-auctioneers abeka imithetho yabo bona.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say, when we look at warranties, we're talking about warranties in the normal process of a sale.
Yes.
The normal buying of goods and services. And auction is a different animal altogether. So those are not applicable there.
Okay.
They are not applicable to auctions. If Zibakona, they'll be there because the owner of the property and the auction house have agreed on saying this item must have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So it will be there. But we are unable to import rules that are applicable to normal sales.
Okay.
And bring them to auction sales.
All right, uyacacisa-ke insizwa lapha ubaba uJoseph Silolo. Asiye on our first caller now sinaye ubaba uThwala all the way from Pretoria. Baba uThwala, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Singakusiza kanjani namhlanje baba?
Njani futhi?
Siyaphila baba, kunjani kwena?
Ikhona.
Singakusiza kanjani baba?
Auction wakuzo auction. Ngathi unelfo usinakufisi lapho ne.
Yebo baba.
Auction abakuvuki lapha kufana nalento zama-electric appliance abavuki uthola leziwe lapho i-grouping.
Yebo baba Thwala.
Awutesting and again uma ngizokhuluma indaba emakheli ukuthi nomakheli awushoni lapha temporary moto le.
Okay baba uThwala, I'm losing you on the line baba, ngicela uphinde futhi ubuze khona ngizokuzwa kahle. Auction,
ne?
Yes.
Ama-electricity appliance abavumi ukuthi atestiwe uwathola sezibekwe phansi lezi zinto i-grouping ngama-price wakhona angithi.
Okay.
And then okwesibili ngizokubhuda futhi ngemoto ukuthi imoto uzayithesta allow to come to own mechanic azoyisheka ukuthi under good condition na.
Yeah.
Ne? How sure they are that qualified mechanic?
Okay, Bob. I didn't quite. Yeah, Bob.
And again, one of the imoto mawusayithenga futhi.
Okay, Baba, I think I get the gist of your question. So, Joff basically is asking, I know we dealt with this when we started the show. He's saying when you go to these auctions nowadays, things like your electrical appliances, you find them on the ground and they've got their prices there and there's no pre-inspection or you're not allowed to go and plug it somewhere to actually go and test if it works. So he's asking, like, I mean, he says since you mentioned that you now give potential bidders that access to actually go before the auction starts and test whatever it is that they might be buying and get some relevant information on the goods that they're going to bid on. So he wants to know, like, why then are those electrical appliances? He still feels like things like your cars, etc. I know you mentioned that you can actually go there with your mechanic and test it pre-hand, but he says things like cars are just sold as is, and then you get a bad deal at the end of the day because you don't know what is wrong with that car.
Well, for instance, the cars. Every single auctioneer that I know allows for viewing times, be it on the morning of the auction, be it for a couple of days building up to the auction. But if you're buying a car, take a mechanic with, take a family member, take an uncle that has worked on cars, that knows, you know, if the flywheel turns, then you've got a very good chance it's going to work. Speak to the auctioneer, get there beforehand, ask him if he can start the car. You know, if the battery's flat, then use your mechanic. If it's a case of buying a TV on an auction, get there before, plug it in, have a look. You know, it's the auctioneer wants to help you as much as possible because he wants you to come back to his next auction. So he doesn't want to give you a bad experience. We want you coming back again and again and again and bringing your friends and family. So if there's a will, there's a way. He will be able to help you. But do not get there 5 minutes before the auction. Do your homework on your car. Do the homework on the television. You know, Google the model number, find out how new the TV is. If it's only a year old, there's probably very little wrong with it. Does it have a plug? It does have a plug. Plug it in. If it doesn't have a plug, then sit down, speak to the auctioneer, be a little wary. There are lots of tricks of the trade that you can learn from speaking to auctioneers, from going to as many auctions as possible, but it really isn't as scary as everybody thinks it is.
Thank you for clarifying that, Joff. Mbukeli uyasho ubaba uJoff uthi akusabisi njengale ndlela enicabanga babukeli ngalapha kuma auctions ungayi ngelanga le auction usufika usuthi uyothenga leyo TV babuthwala thiwa bavunyelwa manje abantu ukuthi bahambe before i-auction izoqala. Kuthiwa lo muntu ozobe i-auctioneer uyakhona ukuthi akhiphe i-date yokuthi ningeza nizo-inspector noma iyiphi into ezobidayiswa nibe ne-information nazi ukuthi isebenza kanjani nemizi thiwa usungahamba uhamba uyoyi-check-a manje ungashayela ucingo 011-714-6918 714-6919. We're back shortly after this. Bogeli, welcome back. 011-714-6918. Alternatively, 011-714-6919. And of course, ungasibhaleli email to consumer@sabc.co.za. Sikhona la sikhuluma ngama auctions, izinto okumele uyibheke Mbukeli. Siyezwa kuthiwa kunama bargain lapha uma uyothenga izinto kakhulukazi njengoba isimo somnotho sithanda ukuntengantenga. Abantu bafuna ukuthi bahambe bakuma auction kanti abazi ukuthi ezinye izinto uyitshela ukuthi bargain, it might not necessarily be lawo ma bargain. All right, ithi ngibheke la on your Facebook messages Mbukeli. Ubegzen Mabele says, I prefer an on-site auction. Last week I was selling a sofa through online marketing and I immediately got the buyer. He sent proof of payment to my cell phone and sent a car for collection. The money didn't clear on my account. The proof of payment was fake and the sofa was gone. Anything you want to comment about here, Joff? This one, he says, is very depressed because the auctioneers are just taking their money.
I would suggest do not accept proof of payment letters or WhatsApps or photographs or emails. Wait, like all auctioneers do, wait until that money reflects in your account. So if you are selling something online, wait until that money reflects in your account and then release the asset. I think from a consumer point of view, and I'm sure Joseph would agree, that is the absolutely safest thing to do. And that is the only way that any member of the SA Institute of Auctioneers does business.
But Joseph, awuchaze lapho Nsizwa uphinde futhi ugcizelele la, because we've heard about reports of fraud that actually takes place kulama auctions. Awusichazele Nsizwa, yiphi comment enisho nina as the NCC about these allegations?
Yes, auctioneers and the auction houses have a registration.
Yeah.
So firstly, you need to ensure that you are dealing with a legitimate company, do your background checks. And because by law, auctioneers are required to keep your funds in a trust. So just ensure that they do have that trust account. And then when even the buyer, when he buys, he doesn't pay you, he pays into the auction house trust account. And then it is remember, the auction house is now sort of a platform that puts the buyer and the seller together. And then the transaction is handled by them. Now, when you go and you say you're selling something on online auction, yet the money comes to you and the goods will then leave your own space where you kept them to give it to the buyer. We are now slightly moving from the traditional online auction, and you are exposing yourself to all sorts of fraud. But like my Joff has said, Gumela wenze sure, but at least you have money. You are sure what we pay money before you part with your goods. The proof yokuthi imali ithunyelwe, it's not proof yokuthi imali ifikile kuwe.
Osichazele ngalama fraud allegations babu Joseph, bekuthiwa kwenzakalani, bekuthiwa yini lo mshikashika that people were alleging actually takes place kulama auctions babu?
They are varied, but the long and short they are going someone goes to your auctioneer, whatever goods, and someone pretends to be the buyer, and they give you proof of payment, which turns out there was actually no actual payment that has been made. So when usuhlukene with your goods, so consumers are advised just to be cautious a bit. Just ensure that you are dealing with a legitimate entity.
And then how prevalent are these complaints when I put Joseph? Like, is it something that is so alarming that you guys have maybe decided you're going to take certain measures to rectify or maybe look into it, Baba?
Yeah, if fraud is actually a criminal offense, so that is outside of our ambit. That is in the ambit, SABC.
Yeah.
Yes, who handle fraud. So, but look, fraud requires a victim.
Yes.
The sad part is that fraud becomes possible because someone puts themselves in a position to be the victim of fraud. So that's why we say consumers are advised to do their own research in everything that you do. Be it an auction, as we say, make sure you know the rules, you understand what you're getting yourself into. Even when you're trying to sell these things online, people come and say, I'm an online auctioneer. Just do not accept it on your mere say so.
All right.
Just do your homework, do a bit of research, click here, do some research and understand who you're dealing with.
Yeah, because abantu bethu mase befuna imali, but Joseph abenzi lawo ma checks and balances, they just want the monies in their account. Bazodayisa ngisho couch umuntu engasachecka ukuthi kahle kahle yiziphi kahle izinto ekumele zilandelwe. Let's take Matiane all the way from Ekatlehong. Matiane, rahamuhela on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Rika uthusa jwang today?
Dumelang kaofela ka mo le bontate.
Dumela mama le kae?
Re teng le kae Ushwaka? Ke kopa le hlalosetse hantle gore di auction tse di etsahala kae bane ra sokola go thola di auction ka mo katlong gore di ukae tsa dikoloi di ukae tsa matlo di ukae tsa di appliances bo di tofu bo into tse kaofela re thole gore di ukae ha re tsebe gore di ukae.
Oh, ra leboga mama. So le batla go bona di auctions di fitla go locationing ya lona kere?
Re batla go tseba bana nako o batla ntho e ithole ka high price anti mole no tlo ithola ka
no tlo ithola Okay. Okay, ra leboga Mamutiane. Re go kopele Joff mo utlo o hlalosetsa ke re mama.
Okay, Papa.
All right, Joff, here's Matiane. She's all the way in a location in Katlehong. She says, where are these auctions, Joff? They never know about this. They want to go and buy those fridges. They want to go buy those cars. They want to go get those bargains. But why are you not coming to Katlehong, Joff?
Funnily enough, I have done auctions in Katlehong, so many people. The easiest thing to do, go to auctioneering.co.za, which is the official South African Institute of Auctioneers website. Every single one of our members, from Katlehong to Uppington to Cape Town to Durban, around the country, is registered on our site. Make sure you download the app or just go to the website, click on what you're interested in, and we'll send you push notifications, emails, SMSs, or whatever you're interested in. But that is probably the biggest and the main website for all our members across the country. So it's extremely informative. It's very, very easy to use. And that is probably, I mean, everyone in the country has a cell phone. Go to that website, auctioneering.co.za, and have a look at what you like.
All right. Okay, Joff, I'm going to ask you something like, how do you even tell if an auctioneer is legitimate? But we're going to take that question after the break. Mbugeli, asiphinde sithathe ikhefu lethu. Kuthiwe lokugcina, ha, siyephi isikhathi sethu? We're coming back shortly after this. Ngayindawo. Welcome back to our final segment. Sisakhuluma ke ngama risks or izinto ekumele uyibone uzibhekisise Mbukeli ngaphambi kokuthi wena uthenge izinto kwi-auction. My guests are Ubaba Joff van Reenen from the South African Institute of Auctioneers, as well as Ubaba Joseph Slolo, yena ke uvela NCC, we company secretary khona lapha ya. Ungashayela ucingo 0117146918 or 71469119 sengizovala ingcingo. But if you still want your questions addressed, ungashayela ucingo noma usibhalele ilokhuzana Facebook message. Joff, I was talking about the legitimacy of these auctioneers, particularly now that we saw during COVID there were online auctions taking place, and it's become like the go-to place to rather not go and sit in the actual auctions at a specific location, but to do it online. But how safe are these, Joff, and who regulates them, and how are they regulated?
My boss, Joseph, regulates it.
He's a busy man, Joff.
No, look, we have seen the numbers. We've seen the numbers spike dramatically because of the pandemic and COVID-19. A lot of people are just don't want to accept the risk and rather stay at home and bid online. How do you know if you're dealing with an accredited auctioneer? Ask for his membership certificate to the Institute of Auctioneers. If he doesn't have that, be aware. If he's auctioning off real estate, ask for his Fidelity Fund certificate with the Estate Agency Affairs Board. If he's auctioning off TVs or toasters or fridges or cars, he must have membership to the South African Institute of Auctioneers. We are bound by very, very strict code of conduct, as well as our rules of auction, as well as the rules of auction from the NCC and Joseph's office. If we do not strictly adhere to them, we get expunged. We are no longer members. And it's extremely difficult that if once you commit or you've broken your ethical rules to get back onto the SIA membership base. We are extremely strict about it. It's the CP Act has helped tremendously for everyone, specifically for auctioneers around the country. We've seen drops of 50, 60, sometimes 65% in complaints that we used to receive. They've dropped dramatically because of the new laws and because of the good work that Joseph's office is doing. But I would still, no matter what auction you go to, you're completely within your rights. Ask that auctioneer for his membership certificate, and he must provide it.
And is there any possibility for the auctioneers to actually manipulate the sale of goods for their own benefit there, Joff?
I think in any industry you have rogue elements. It is difficult when we have hundreds and hundreds, and there are thousands of auctions, if not tens of thousands of auctions every year. Our members do not. If they are caught, they are expelled, they are fired with immediate effect. And then invariably we suggest to the client that criminal actions are followed up on, and official police dockets are opened up. So we take it very, very seriously. One bad auctioneer in our entire membership is one too many, and it just reflects badly on the industry as a whole. So we like to look after everybody. We like to show free and fair auctions everywhere we go, and to look after both buyers and sellers.
All right, but Joseph, uthi ubaba uJofla nenza umsebenzi omuhle baba mayelana nomthetho esenu-introducile in order to try and regulate the industry, because I mean we were hearing horrific stories abantu bethi bathenge into under that food stoods terminology, umuntu complain ukuthi uthole into ingasebenzi nokusebenza. Mhlambe iyiphi baba eminye imizamo enizama ukuthi nenze sure ukuthi le industry is safe, and you can even recommend it for abantu bethu ukuthi bazame ukuthi bayothola khona, particularly abantu abaningi siyazi ukuthi they've got bad credit records, abakhona ukuthi bayothenga izinto through the normal legal means because kwenziwa ama-affordability assessments and so forth. So if umuntu ekhona ukuthi uyakhona ukubeka isamba semali ahambe kwi-auction, nithini yini eningaba encourage ngayo ukuthi like what are you looking into to make this industry even more safer for them as ama-consumers, Bab?
Yes, there are plans afoot to accredit Isaiah as an industry. So kuzoba ne-ombudsperson for the auction industry. There are those discussions and preparations that are being made. So soon nayo izoba ne-ombud where consumers will then be in a position to easily lodge whatever complaints they may have against a specific auctioneer, and those terms zaleyo ombud will require ukuthi everyone who is in the space, say auctioneering, abe member or belong to that ombud. So that will enhance the registration that is required of the houses, and then it will also make it easier, more than it already is, for consumers to then lodge their complaints, and the turnaround times for the resolution of those disputes to then be reduced. When the dispute resolution that is now being offered in SAIA SEs and the ones that will be offered by the Ombud, if the complaint is not resolved there, consumers are then still allowed to lodge a complaint with us for us to investigate. And if we do find prohibited conduct on the part of the auction house, we are then able to prosecute that auction house, and they can face a fine of up to R1 million or 10% of their annual turnover, whichever is the greater of the two.
Let me quickly take some of your Facebook messages here. Uvuyolwethu Mdibaniso uthi thina singabantu abamnyama into eyenza sithenge kuma-auction kungoba asinayo imali ekufanele sikwenze ukuba sithenge kwindawo ezikhuselekileyo, meaning basically we need to be buying these things through a safe platform like your auctions. Xolile Nompilo says kubhlungu ngoba basidlela imali sibe singenayo sithi sizama ukuqhuba impilo nabo ngelinye icala bathi bazama ukuziphilisa kodwa bona okubhlungu ubugebengu. Ngiyabonga. So Joff, basically a lot of people here are still very in a kind of a gray area. They're not trusting whether they should really go for the auction route in order to purchase goods. But as you heard from Joseph, I'm sure you are smiling from ear to hear that you're going to be getting an ombudsman, and whatever queries and issues that auction bidders actually encounter while at an auction, they can actually be speedily resolved.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a 48-hour turnaround time with our own Institute of Auctioneers for any complaints or queries that are offered. But the good work that Joseph's office is doing at the NCC is fantastic, and it's all good news for the bidders out there. But I would say to everyone out there that's listening and watching this, if you are scared of auctions, if you've never been to an auction, if you've never bid on an auction, go to one, watch, look, learn, even if you don't buy, I would suggest that you don't buy for the first couple of auctions that you go to, but they are a lot of fun and you can learn a lot and you can save a lot. Go to as many as you can, go to the websites, register an email address, you'll get the notifications, keep going, keep going. You certainly won't buy a car that you know nothing about. You'd rather go to BMW, speak to them, get the service records, get the instruction manuals, read up, look at it, test drive another one, and when you find the one you like, come to an auction and we'll get it to you cheaper. But they really are not as, I think it's more misinformation or a lack of information from the public, because not many people have been to auctions, even though hundreds of thousands attend every year. But it's not an avenue that the normal person would think of going to. And after being in the industry and being an auctioneer for 27 odd years, it's probably the most exciting thing you could ever do with your clothes on. So I highly recommend it.
27 years with your clothes on, one of the two words I picked up, John. Abu Joseph, kusazwakala la nsizwa. Yini mhlambe wena I know ukuthi you've just mentioned ama measures enwathathayo as NCC ukuthi nenze sure ukuthi le industry regulator, but as you heard ama tweets lana ama Facebook messages, it sounds like abantu abamnyama bakayi trust le industry baba. So yini mhlambe in closing ongabatshela yona ukuthi lalelani uma kunokuthi nokuthi ngeza kuthina sizoyibheka inkinga zenu, but would you recommend ukuthi abantu bahambe bayothenga izinto kuma auctions as indle emnyama baba, ngoba hey engathi bayasaba abathembi kahle kahle?
Most definitely, because the auction, it's another way yokuthenga izinto. You either go to a shop and you buy, or you can go to the auction and buy. The only recommendation we make is that if you're going online, make sure that you're going to a proper auction. You're not going to a place where you will be defrauded. And then again, yenza sure ukuthi wenza i-research yakho both kule nto ofuna ukuzithenga and the auction house that you're dealing with. Ensure that you are satisfied as to its legitimacy. As Joff has said, go onto their website, check if that auction house is registered. Then I concur, you do not have anything to worry about. And an auction, he says you don't have to buy, you just have to go and you learn how it works.
All right. And in closing, very quickly, Jeff, I mean, a lot of people are saying that, you know, auctions take place in the open, but are they really for everyone? Or would you say there's a specific kind of person who has a knack for these things? Like you said, you've been doing this for 27 years with your clothes on, and you've been enjoying it.
Well, that's what my wife says, so I'm not too sure.
Very quickly, Joe.
It is. I would recommend it to anybody and everybody. If you haven't been to one, go to one. It's very difficult nowadays with the new laws for something bad to happen to you. Do your research. Go to as many as you can. They are fun, they are exciting, and it's a wonderful day out with the family.
I'm going out there with my clothes fully on, Joff, and I'm going to try and purchase one of those fridges or TVs. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your invaluable knowledge today. That was Ubabu Joff Nguyen from the South African Institute of Auctioneers. No baba Joseph Silolo ovela lapha ku-NCC or company secretary Mbukeli. That is where we're going to leave it namhlanje. Thank you so much for joining us. Do join us next week for another live consumer affairs discussion. Nosimpiwe okajala untokazi uthi nje nginithanda nonke emakhaya, nibe safe, do your research, nisale kahle. Bye bye.